In March 2020, the UK was placed in lockdown in an attempt to manage the COVID-19 pandemic. Side effects of this included an increase in parcel deliveries, an increase in leisure time, and lots of new devotees of YouTube. So like many others, I remembered that I'd got lots of model railway items in the loft and set about getting trains running again. As we were stuck at home, there was plenty of scope for experimenting with things like automation, PWM power supplies, 3D printing of unobtainable parts, and before long I started producing videos showing different aspects of this, while others moved into live streaming with a bit of zoom thrown in. One of the sites I found was Budget Model Railways, where Mike Potter and his son Doug introduced us to the concept of using cardboard to make baseboards. Well, I already had a gallon of PVA and wasn't allowed to build anything with it, so Amazon were delivering a constant supply of cardboard boxes to us, so we started to experiment, and some of my early videos featured various cardboard baseboards, and a few of them are still in use 5 years later. Over time, lots changes, but I've continued to follow a few of the channels, and recently Budget Model Railways started putting up Train Shed Tuesdays, and then came up with the idea of a floating shelf challenge. The idea is that you can buy a floating shelf fairly cheaply from your favourite building merchant, and then use that to design a model railway on. There are a few rules. There must be at least one point, or switch for cousins overseas, at least 2 buildings, and the scenic area should not expand beyond the edges of the shelf. The maximum size is 60 centimetres by 23.5 centimetres. Now, the size limitations means that it's more suited to smaller scales than 00, but a small extension fiddle yard is allowed beyond the scenic area. One of my early acquisitions in the 70s was a Playcraft H09 set, and I bought a bit of extra track and a couple of trucks with it. So I decided to see if that would work in the space provided. I also decided to try to use cardboard to create my own shelf size baseboard. I still had some PVA left after all. Early attempts proved that a loop of track would not fit onto a single shelf, and so I decided that I would have one shelf as the scenery and a second one behind it, which could be attached to add a fiddle yard, sort of circular shaped one. It's fairly simple to build up a laminated cardboard baseboard in double shelf size, and I scored a groove across both sides of it to mark the join and to make it easy to separate the two shelves, although the rules relaxed slightly, so I don't think I need to physically separate them and rejoin them now. That said, the track on the back shelf is not fixed down, so it's still fairly easy to separate them if I need to. I found a track plan that worked, which gave a tuning fork layout for shunting, with optional fiddle space behind it, and I marked this on the cardboard. I wanted to add some gradient into the model, but I was uncertain how much slope I could incorporate before the engine could pull things up it. But then I couldn't fix the track down until I had the base stable. What to do? So one day I just went for it, got a jigsaw out and cut a ramp out. And then I decided I wanted some extra depth. So I thought that I then needed some more cardboard and to build a third shelf to put below the main one. So I had some old pieces of a lemur bridge in the loft and some Atlas piers. So I settled on a semi-scientific height between shelves of about that. Next thought was how to stand the shelf up. I had some 20mm conduit left over from a job and cut a cardboard sleeve to measure the height between shelves. Next problem, how to get the separators to be upright. There's probably easy ways, but I settled on pushing some panel pins into the base in strategic places, points upwards, and then placing the second scenic shelf on top and pushing down. After that, a 19mm drill bit on the pinpricks helped remove the first layer of cardboard, and conduit placed in one of the holes, cardboard sleeve around it, mark the top of the sleeve and cut the conduit to length. Hot glue in place, rinse and repeat for the rest of the piers. Next, I used a drill bit to remove a layer of cardboard from the underside of the scenic shelf, test fit, and then hot glue the two pieces together and leave it to set. And this gave it the appearance of an underground car park, to be honest. I didn't know what I wanted under the bridge, and I still don't. It could be a canal with towpaths, or it could be a single track railway. Next, I needed to decide what to do with the scenery, and thought that a quarry scene might work. So 2 cereal boxes and a number of J-cloths were sacrificed to create a nearly sheer wall, and then some brown paper from a delivery box was scrunched up, dampened, opened out and PVA'd. This was laid over the cardboard framework left to set, and I added some old newspapers under the cardboard to stop it gluing itself to the shelf. I sprinkled some grit over the wet PVA, and most of it stuck, and the grit was from a bag of terrarium material that I got a few years back as a ballast experiment. It's quite light actually. Once dry, the back of the wall was covered with newspaper or PVA, papier-mâché, and I also formed a side quarry wall going back onto the fiddle area, which helped keep the rock face vertical. The quarry itself was made from old cork bath mat, and it had previously been a rock face on my loft railway until last year. Next step was to add some shape to the very flat base. A mixture of PVA, water, drop of soap and some interior filler combined to make a good alternative to other modelling products. Loosely dashed around the place, it gave the ground effect I was looking for. I kept the track beds clear as far as I could, as I remembered that H09 was not very forgiving with sudden movement side to side. Once everything was dried, I washed it with brown paint and a watery brush and sprinkled a bit more grit around to see what it looked like. And at some point it became inevitable that I'd have to start cleaning the track and laying it. Also do some test running. The loco was quite dry, has not been used for about 50 years, but it responded fairly well to some TLC. The track cleaned up surprisingly easy, and the fish plates adjusted quite well too. Some initial runs around proved that the hole I'd cut in the quarry wall wasn't wide enough or high enough. I sorted out the width issue, and then the next time round the loco decapitated itself coming through the hole and knocked the cab off. I also managed to drop the remainder of the loco about 4 foot onto the floor, which didn't do it any favours really. Coffee stirrers are a good source of timber, being about a scale 15 inches by 3 inches, and so with a bit of Sadlin's fence paint I created some infill for the railway bridge, a platform and an entrance portal into the mine. The last bit of detail was the join between the front face of the hill and the quarried area. A mixture of PVA and grit pasted into the join filled the gap nicely. I'd originally intended using a PWM power supply salvaged from one of my cardboard layouts to run everything, but amongst the extra track I'd originally bought was an electric point, and I found that the Playcraft 00 and H09 used 15 volts AC to power their points, so I didn't need the CDU I'd also found, but I did need a transformer that supplied 15 volts AC as well as 12 volt DC controlled. I had an old HM controller handy, so I'm using that at the moment. Operating switch for the point got mounted on a piece of board that was formerly the quarry wall and was exactly the right size to fit onto the front between the shelves. Power supplies go via a removable connector, so I can swap to a different controller if I want to. I plonked a few buildings and vehicles on, and the Matchbox collection will be raided next to add some more. I've got some cardboard reserved to panel in the sides between the shelves. So, what next? One thought was to turn it into a disused quarry that now has an outdoor activity centre in place, with high ropes, etc. There's one in Derbyshire near Wirksworth, and it does actually have a narrow gauge railway running into it, which is the Steeple Grange light railway, I think. Anyway, having kept all this secret for nearly a month, I shall now try and add some photos to the budgetmodelrailways.co.uk challenge page, see what they have to say. Just as an afterthought, I've deliberately tried to keep the basic set undamaged, no ballasting etc, in case anyone wants it as a collectible item. The rest of it, of course, can be binned with no cost. Final thought. Trucks are difficult to find at budget prices, but I did manage to get 10 sets of wheels and axles for about £12. So, some 15mm mini trunking then provides a basic rolling chassis. I just need to practice getting the axle boxes parallel and then sort out some couplings. Then I can build some bodies on. So why not have a go yourself? Go to www.budgetmodelrailways.co.uk and then follow the links to look at the challenge pages. Hope you enjoyed this, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.